You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome along to the latest Today's Conveyancer podcast. Today I'm talking with Dan Warburton. Dan enables law firm partners and owners to free up time and I quote, make a shed load more money, I think was what you said to me, Dan. It's a little bit flippant, but I know that you work with a lot of law firms, a lot of owners to really free up their time and make better management decisions. Is that fair?
Yeah, elevate their management and leadership so that they have teams that operate at high levels of performance, so they get to take home, much more enjoyable levels of profit whilst not having to grind out such exhausting hours.
This is one podcast that I'm particularly excited about because I think this is probably something that we recognize in all of our businesses. We're going to talk quite specifically about legal, but this really is an issue that is across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, it particularly applies to the legal sector because lawyers are promoted based on their book of clients and the number of hours they bill. If you bill enough hours and you build up enough clients, then you get promoted to partner. But then you then have the workload that you're supposed to complete, the billing target is supposed to hit, and a team of people to manage. And very few partners ever actually transition out of what I call being a technician in the business to being a business owner. And so they end up exhausted, overwhelmed, and then they build a firm that consistently relies on them to keep operating. So one day they can't step down and they just either end up burning themselves out or getting ill and having to stop work or walking away from a business they spent years building.
And that's one thing that we do recognize, particularly across the podcasts that we run, where a lot of firms can't afford runoff cover, for example, and they want to retire. So you see a lot of firm mergers, you see a lot of acquisitions. And in fact, that's been a real trend around the legal sector, probably for the last 2 or 3 years, I would think, hasn't it? If not longer.
Yeah, good point. Absolutely. That's why there is such a trend for that, because a lot of these partners can't see another way out. Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting discussion today. In the first instance, I'd really like you to tell us a bit about yourself, Dan, who you are. We know a little bit about what you do, but what makes you uniquely qualified to work very specifically in the legal sector?
Well, the truth is I've never been a lawyer and I've never worked in a law firm. So how can I be possibly showing law firm partners and owners how to properly delegate away their workload? Well, 15 years ago, I was investing in a lot of leadership management training. And out of that, I grew a handyman business to a team of 8. And then I grew that too fast, too quick, had to close the whole thing down. And I learned from the trainings that I was doing that we can only successfully lead teams of people when they willingly take the responsibility for the success of the business they're in. In other words, we can ask people to do things, but if they don't care about the success of the business as a whole, they never put their heart and soul into it, and you can never rely on them and trust them to do things properly. So with that newfound knowledge, I then went and built a 24-hour emergency plumbing and drainage business. And that really grew very well. Also because I'd learned how to lead somebody to lead others effectively rather than me leading people directly below me. And then I started traveling all over Europe. I was having a great time snowboarding in the Alps, spending time in the south of Spain. And people started to say, can you show me how to do this? And so that was the beginning of me being a coach and mentoring business owners to go and create businesses they really loved. And then as time went on, I invested in more programs, more leadership, management, entrepreneurship, and marketing programs. And in one of these marketing programs, about 4 years ago, he asked us, have a look at all the clients that you've worked with and see, is there kind of any pattern between the kind of people that you've enjoyed working with and the results they got? And it was really clear. The clients of mine who got the best results were law firm partners and owners. It was really clear. And so ever since then, that's been my sole focus of what I do.
So you've outlined that this is a profession where, and we see it across a lot of different professions. I was telling you, my mum was a teacher, my dad was a doctor, and they were both promoted because they were very good at what they did, not necessarily because they had those management and leadership skills. What particular issues do law firm owners and partners face that you solve?
But classically, it's this thing of feeling like that what enables them to bring home the money that they bring in is them doing the billable work. It's them working those crazy long hours and producing work that they can invoice for. But actually, if we look at it, if you have 10 highly committed fee earners, each billing 100 hours a month, then you can see that they're going to be able to bring in so much more profit for the firm than if the partner tried to bill on their own. And so when you stand back from it, mathematically, it just makes absolute sense that it's much better to be delegating the work away to team members and then empowering them to get their hours up and to deliver high standards of work. And then the next challenge I hear is my clients say, yeah, but I've had my clients for years. They always come to me to do their legal work. How can I possibly delegate this away? And so what I show them is that if you move to, instead of being available all the time on a call, is you give all of your clients a link to schedule a Zoom call, and you say to them, we're now able to deliver you an even better, slicker, faster service. And we're going to be having Jack or Samantha joining us for our calls. So whenever you need to speak to me, just use this link. This will ensure you can always get completely uninterrupted time to speak directly with me. And I always have times scheduled so I'm available at short notice. And then what you do is when the client dials in, you then introduce Jack or Samantha, and you then work with them as you've always done. But you turn to Jack every so often and you say, what do you think? What else in this do you think we're missing? What else could we do? And then what that does is it starts to show that you've got confidence in the person that's next to you, your colleague, for handling your dear client's work. And then as they answer things that seem, actually, that was quite clever. Actually, I didn't think of that. Then bit by bit, you transfer the confidence in the client's eyes onto your colleague. And then three months of this, it can get to a point where you can say to Jack or Samantha, look, I can't make the next call with this client, but just, I know you've got it, just handle it, and then just give me a report or something afterwards of how it went. And then you let the client know, look, I can't make this one on this occasion. And then what happens is you transfer the face of the work from you to your colleague. So then you can still delegate work away from clients that you've had from years very successfully and still enjoy the profits, but from your colleagues completing the work instead of you.
I suppose the devil's advocate in me is sitting here thinking, well, that all sounds great, but what if Jack or Samantha isn't quite as skilled as me? And in fact, they're not going to be as skilled as me because I'm the best.
And got the most experience.
How do we get over that particular hurdle?
You build them up. You make sure they do the parts they can do. You still do the part of the client work that only you can do. But then what you do is you schedule weekly one-on-one calls with your colleagues, especially the key team members. And in those one-on-one calls, you support them and you show them the work that you do and how you do it. And in those weekly sessions, you also start to delegate more and more and more of it away. The point is if we keep our head down as partners and just keep trying to crank out work and never look up, it will get to a point where we've built a firm that completely relies on us to keep running, both for the profits, but also the team want things from us. We haven't got time for them. We feel impatient. We just want to get back to our billing and fee earning. So we give them the answers. We tell them what they need. We tell them what they need to hear to keep moving. And so they keep relying on us. They send another text messages. They send another email. We just keep answering. So we constantly end up building a firm that relies on us. But if we start by implementing, say, weekly one-on-one calls to delegate the workload away and to review work before it's released to clients and have that as a consistent week in, week out as part of our routine, we then build highly effective team members underneath us that then enable us to be able to go on holiday, spend weekends with our kids and families, and actually have a life outside of work. But the great thing is you end up with this team that, if you do it properly, are reliable. They really take care of your clients. They bring in great revenue into the business and enables you to enjoy great profits without you having to do so much billable work. And the exponential curve just gets faster and greater and more exhilarating, because once you're then free from having to do a lot of the billing work, that freed up time you can use to solve all the other problems in your firm, like why are staff leaving and breaking their employment contracts? What's going on there? Marketing. Why aren't you breaking in to some of the bigger, juicier clients and the greater opportunities? And all these things that I know that you as a law firm partner or owner that are listening to this right now are facing, but can never quite seem to get round to doing or handling. The first thing is you must be replacing yourself from the heaviest, most demanding work so that finally you're free to start building that law firm you love to work in.
I really want to drill into what that looks like, because I suspect that listeners are sat there saying, that all sounds great, Dan, but what does the structure of that one-on-one look like? How can I really make, and this is asking you to give away your trade secrets, I know, but how can I really make that an effective use of time?
So the first thing is, as I was saying earlier, that I learned the hard way, only when people feel responsible for the success of our business or firm as a whole will they actually do things properly. And the only time that people feel responsible for something is when they feel like something's in it for them, that if they don't do something well, they're going to lose out. So the first thing is to schedule a one-on-one with your key fee earner and then say to them, hi, thanks so much for giving me this time. You've been here a little while at the firm and I realize I've never asked you, what do you want to succeed at? What do you want to get out of your employment position in this firm? What matters to you? And you'll find it could be some of them want Friday afternoons off. Some of them just don't want to do any overtime. Some want a pay rise. Some want to become partner. Some want to go away for a whole month in the summer, whatever it is. If you give that individual your undivided attention in that one-on-one time, they will start to feel valued by you and like they matter to you. With that, they start to feel a little bit more loyal towards you and succeeding. And then that's where you get the payoff of them feeling responsible for the success in their role, because they know that they're going to get something out of it as well. But then week by week, you dial in and you agree on KPIs. What targets do you want them to hit? What amount of hours do you want them to bill a month? And then asking, do you have everything you need to hit those targets? Is the technology working okay? Do you need more training or support from me? Is there certain work that you struggle with that you can't do that you want me to work with you to review and elevate the performance of, whatever it is? And then week by week, you make requests. So a clear request has 3 key elements to it. And this is a big one. So a request is asking someone exactly what you want done. And it needs to be measurable. Like, it can't just be go and make the client happy. Like, exactly what is it that you want done? And the powerful thing about that is it causes you to have to know what exactly you need to ask, which has you then understand your systems and processes on a deeper level. So first, making a clear request of what you want done. Secondly, time frame. If you don't agree a time frame on what you're asking someone to do, that's not a request. That's some weird bit of communication that always leads to you being let down. And then once you've agreed a time frame, and if you find too squeamish in doing that because you feel like that's micromanaging, you can ask them, by when do you think you could have that with me by? And then they could say, can I have it with you Wednesday next week? Well, actually, the client needs it by this Friday. Can you get it to me by this Thursday? And then always give people either of these 3 options to every request you make: accept, decline, or counter offer. If you don't give those options, then you're actually manipulating, because what you're doing is subconsciously communicate, look, if you don't do this, you're going to be in trouble, right? So accept, decline, or counter offer. Coming back to what a request is, it's a measurable result, time frame. The third part is agreement. They need to agree on what needs to be done on the time frame it's going to be done by. When that's then done, you then write that down on some piece of document that in the cloud, a Google sheet or something that between you has them agree in writing what they're going to do. Then week by week, you say, did you do that? Did you do this? Did you do that? No, you didn't do that. Okay. Now, most of the time, or a lot of the time, leaders in the legal sector, they get frustrated, they get annoyed, they feel angry, they feel let down. The minute you do that and you express that in any way, that individual then closes down to really telling you what's going on with them and going on in the firm, which means that you then end up becoming like a rabbit in headlights that has no idea where your business is going and where the problems really are. So never lose your temper or get angry with people, and actually thank them for telling you that they've not done it. Well, thanks for that. Good on you for telling me. So look, now this is the little thing that a lot of my clients write down everywhere. There is never anything wrong. There is only ever something missing. Have that as your mantra and say to your colleagues, okay, well, look, there's never anything wrong. There's only ever something missing. What is it that got in the way that had you not be able to complete that or do that on time? What do you need from me? And the art is to always be standing in what can I take responsibility for the lack of performance in this individual? Whereas usually we're very quick to blame that individual or something else for why they're not performing well, and which then causes what's called a blame culture. You want to move your firm from one of being a blame culture to what I call a responsibility culture, where people are willing to take responsibility for what they haven't done or by when they said they would do it. And the way you do that is by supporting your colleagues to be honest about what they didn't do and by when. And the way you do that fundamentally is by you owning it whenever you break your word first, right? But these are generally the fundamentals of how you do it in the structure. And if you have this in place week by week by week, you're able to really support your colleagues to greatly elevate their performance. And with that, their responsibility rises. Their ability to respond to situations and to respond to your request rises and rises and rises, which means that week by week, you can delegate more and more, make another clear request, and bold request, lay it on, lay it on. And if you've created this relationship dynamic where you don't lose temper, you don't get angry with them, then when too much is too much, they will tell you. They'll say, you know what, I'm really buckling under this workload. I don't know that I can do this. I can't keep this up. Brilliant. Thanks so much for letting me know. Okay, let's have a look at this. Bring your schedule up on. Let's have a look. What have you got that fills up your schedule? So let's look at what of your workload we can delegate away to your junior, or do you need a new junior? Should we look at doing that and hiring somebody else? You see, there's a real supportive mentoring kind of approach to have towards the success of the employees. When you do this, you will astound yourself at the performance of your team and what you build. You really will. And you know this by the story that I submitted that you published about Vanessa Chalice that I work with. You know, how she went from sort of 13K to over 80K months, and went from working over 80 hours to less than 30.
A couple of things that you said that I want to pick up on there, Dan. One is you've described this as a weekly process. Is that important? Is that a fundamental?
Not necessarily. Some of your high performers might be so reliable and so great at what they do. They just need a touch point once a month for half an hour or something. How's it going? What's next? What do you need? You know, whereas some that are in the growing phase might need more one-on-one time. And that might not be necessarily from you. That could be from one of your other seniors, and then that senior reports to you. But on a weekly basis, if that senior is managing somebody that requires a lot of touch points, it's good for them to also have regular touch points with you, so that you can ensure that the high level of performance is well delegated down from you and right to the far corners of your firm.
The second word I want to pick up on is performance. The legal sector has traditionally operated in an appraisal culture where we look back at what we've done. Performance feels a bit different. What is the difference, if there is one, and why is performance important?
So many law firms do appraisals a bit differently, but the fact is any individual who is constantly demanded to do work and made requests of and has lots of work piled on, if you keep doing that and you don't stop regularly to acknowledge them and thank them for what they do, they will start to feel underappreciated. And then that's when they start looking for other jobs elsewhere and they start wanting to leave. If you want your staff members to stay with you, you must acknowledge regularly. And so performance, it's like how much input is being put in to get that output. Low performance is high volumes of input to get low output. High performance is putting in low input to get high output. So naturally, it's the needle to move in any business is the level of performance of every employee across the firm. And if then that needle is shifting, it's very powerful to acknowledge people for that, especially when somebody comes to us and says they haven't done something, or they know they've really messed up a piece of work. Before you go into giving them corrective instruction, say to them, Samantha, I just want you to know that I see the effort that you put in. I see how hard you work around here. And I can't tell you how much I value that. That kind of behavior is what has us have money consistently coming in, pay our mortgages, put food on our table, and give us a great business. And I just want you to know that I really enjoy having you around here. And I wish that more of our team members had your kind of mindset. Now, if you just take that 20 seconds to say that, it can cause a huge ripple effect, an uplifting effect on her. She'll take that home to her family. She'll spread that with the rest of her colleagues. She'll actually want to help her colleagues have more of what she's feeling. And it just lifts everybody up and just elevates everybody's loyalty towards your success and to that of the firm. So that's why I focus on performance as being a key factor and acknowledging performance when it's in place.
And is it important that this happens in person? Is it important it happens virtually? I guess most firms are working as a hybrid. How do we best facilitate this?
Well, quite simply, when leadership is in, it's in. When leadership is out, it's out. So it doesn't matter whether your business is run completely remotely or all in the office or hybrid. If you're making clear requests of your team members and then you're consistently holding them to account on what they said they would do by when they said they would do it, then it doesn't matter how you do it. But for instance, making requests or acknowledging is only so effective in writing. There isn't that human to human connection, that looking in the eye and really speaking from the heart as such, you could say, that you get when you do verbally. So absolutely, I'd say don't try running a business by email, because bit by bit by bit, people drift, they become more distant, they become more disengaged. And you need to keep kindling that warmth of connection in people, which is why I actually guide my clients to schedule regular weekly one-on-one calls with their key team members to give them that support and mentoring. And that's how we found best elevates the performance of the whole firm. In other words, enables a law firm partner to need to work less hours, input less effort, and gets much greater output, as in greater profits and a better quality of lifestyle for themselves and everyone involved.
We've both talked about slightly different terms. You've talked about leadership. I've talked a little bit about management. But there's a key difference between the two, isn't there? What in your mind are those key differences?
So leadership is almost like the spark that brings an idea into being vocalized through requests, through conversation to grow an idea so that people can start to see there's an opportunity for me here. There's a new action for me here I could take. That's the leadership. And then sort of the second part of the leadership is then who you're requesting to do that, or who's going to take that on, or what do you take on, what do you commit to? And then the management is the holding to account and supporting each individual to then fulfill what they gave their word to or said they were going to do.
And are there different skills required for both then?
Yes, I would absolutely say, it's like the creative business leader is somebody who just blazes forwards, has ideas, raises capital, goes out, makes it rain, gets the meetings, makes it happen, and hey, drinks champagne and everything else. But then they leave a trail of mess of stuff, which you could call, great opportunity. But it takes somebody to then ground that into actually disciplined productivity that leads to adding value,
I was about to say, you often don't find great leaders are great managers and vice versa. You don't find that great managers are always great leaders.
Yeah, that's right. There is a bit of overlap between the two. Like you can be managing someone, which is saying, have you done this? You haven't done it. Okay, why haven't you done it? What could you do next? Okay, you're going to do that. Great. All right, speak next week. That's it. It's like it can get very robotic. The leadership side is saying, okay, so look, this is the third week that it's been on the list and you've still not done it. So look, what's going on with you? What do you need from me to really succeed at this? Is everything all right at home? Are you okay? Is your health all right? Have you got any other worries? And that is all very much the human aspect, which it still needs to be there really for management to be effective. But I think it's more of a leadership trait, which is more of a sales trait as such, which is the ability to be fully expressed in communication, speak about emotions, have those conversations that everybody else avoids, which I think is the skills that a lot of people in the legal sector lack. And I think that's because a lot of people in the legal sector are taught to have the answer, to know the answer, to be all knowing, all powerful, all knowledgeable all the times about everything. So as soon as we have somebody who's crying or in a difficult situation, we automatically assume we're supposed to fix them and have the answer. Sometimes all they need is just you sit there quietly, not saying absolutely anything until that wave of emotion passed, and then saying, "You all right? What do you need from me? Is there anything I can do for you?" That's it. That can have a profound effect on someone's life and make somebody extraordinarily loyal to you, to your business and ambition.
You've kind of touched on it already, but if we are being constructive, if we are being nice, for want of a better word, and perhaps that's not quite the right word, Dan, how do we express our displeasure when perhaps that task that we've instructed is taking 2, 3, 4 weeks and it should have been done before now?
So you need to be tracking people's performance so that then when they let you down, you can visually show to somebody that you've been let down. You've had a promise broken constantly. But then let's say it gets to 4 weeks and Charlie has still not hit his hours of billing. What you'd say is, "Charlie, thanks so much for making the time for dialing in for this call this week." So there's always kindness, acknowledgement. Now, however much you might be stewing or feeling angry, you breathe through it. You've got two separate things that happen in business. They've got your feelings, thoughts, all of this going on, and then you've got statistics and what's really going on. It's the statistics that actually matter to your business above all and everything else. The feelings are a secondary byproduct just because we're humans. Now, not that they're to be neglected, but they are not to be the driver of the way and how we communicate. So then you could say, "Charlie, so let's have a look at your hours. So we can see for the 4th week, you've still not been able to hit the targets that we agree." So now what you do is you want Charlie to be getting the impact of that. You could say, "Look, I'm really frustrated with that. That's just not good enough." But that's not going to be effective. What you need to say is, "Okay, what do you think the impact is of you not hitting your targets? What do you think the impact is on you wanting to become a partner? What do you think the impact is on me wanting to give you more opportunities?" And if you carried on doing this, where do you think your career might look in whatever one it is, if you continue to do this and break your word in the next year, 2, 5 years? So what you're doing is you're guiding them to get the impact of their ineffectiveness, because only when somebody gets the impact of their ineffectiveness will they then do something about it. So then at that point you say, "Okay, well, look, thanks so much for looking at this. I know it's not an easy conversation. So what do you need from me to get these hours up?" Like, we've looked at technology, so we've updated that. We've looked at the level of work that was being delegated to you. It wasn't enough. So now we've got that in place. What is it? And so what you'll find, it's like if somebody has a mistake they keep repeating and you guide them to find a solution to it, if they find a solution to it through you guiding them in conversation, it's very unlikely they'll repeat that mistake again. So then if you solve that one, then there'll be the next most prominent mistake or ineffective behavior will show up. Then you handle that one and so on and so on. And it will get to a point where you're eyeing them all out. Then you go around again. "Okay, so let's see how you now go over the next 4 weeks implementing this thing that we've said now, and repeat back to me what you're going to do first." Great. That. What else? That. Okay, brilliant. So then you jot it down, write it down so you've even got comments on it, and then you go around again. Then at the end of that 4 weeks, if you're seeing no progress or a level of progress that is just not fast enough, then you need to be honest. If your leadership is in, if you're making clear requests and holding them to account and they're still not progressing in their performance fast enough, then it's more than likely time to terminate their contract or to demote them and put them into a lower position where they don't have to hit those levels of responsibility. But you only know to do that and satisfy HR needs if you are documenting and tracking their performance. And that's why the weekly one-on-one calls are so great, because the rest of the time you don't have to be looking for what promises are broken, what do they say they would do, have they done it, let me check my email inbox now. No, none of that. You just dial in and just check there and then with them in that call. And then that way, the rest of the time, you start to get these blocks of time where you can really focus on elevating other problems and breakdowns you have in your business.
It's been a fascinating discussion, Dan, and I massively appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I feel as though you've given away all of your trade secrets, but I know that if you implement a lot of this, then there's some success around the corner. As you say, you wrote a great piece for the publication recently. What does success look like? How do you know that this is working?
I've got another client in the USA. He came to me a year and a half ago. There was 9 of them in the firm when he started, and he was working over 100 hours a week. He was exhausted, completely burnt out, and he felt like he had to do everything himself. And he was receiving over 250 text messages a day from team members wanting to know, where's this file? How do I do this? How do I do that? I mean, 250 text messages. I had to double check with him. Did he really mean that? And he did. And when we looked at it, what we discovered was that he'd made the classic mistake of advising and not leading. So whenever anybody had a question, he would advise them, tell them how to do it. So he became like the internet for everybody in his business. And they always came to him for the answer on how to do everything. So the first thing we did was we set up these weekly one-on-one calls between him and his key team members. And then I asked him to request of his team members, unless necessary. If you have to, that's fine. But unless necessary, don't contact me outside of these one-on-one sessions, and bring everything to me in these one-on-one sessions that you've got, all your problems, all your challenges, jot them down throughout the week, and we'll go through them one by one. And then what happened was, within a week, he went from receiving 250 text messages a day to about 10. And then in his meetings, some of them weren't long enough. And so he had 2 half-an-hour one-on-ones for some individuals. For another one, he had 2 one-hour ones. But then he noticed that in between them, he had these nice lengths of peace and quiet where he could really focus on what mattered to him. And then through making clear requests, delegating his workload away, and then employing somebody that was more of a senior level to directly start taking over his more advanced work, and then putting him as well into a weekly one-on-one call to offer him mentoring and ensuring he was on track. After 6 months, he made over an extra $707,000. And after a year, he'd grown his team from 9 to 15, and his law firm went from being valued at 3.5 million to 8.5 million. But to him, that wasn't the best bit. The best bit was that he went from working over 100 hours to less than 50. He now has weekends with his children, family. He gets to go skiing regularly, and he just has his joy back again for his work and what he's doing. He really enjoys it. And I mean, since we've spoken, he's now employed another 5, and he's really off to, building something absolutely extraordinary. But that just shows you when what I call the skill of profitable delegation is learned and in place, how extraordinary and how life-changing it can be for a law firm owner or partner.
We are out of time, and I could probably talk to you for the rest of the day about this, Dan, because, as I said, it's an issue that an awful lot of businesses face, never mind just law firms. And a lot of what you've talked about, I recognize in my own business. And I think we're the architects of our own success and the architects of our own downfall at times, aren't we? Because there are times when we know we need to do some of this stuff, but it doesn't always hit the top of the to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's all our knowledge and who we are and all of our past that makes us who we are today. And who we are today, as you say, creates both our success, but it's also where and how we're in our own way.
Well, I hope people have taken a lot out of this. I certainly have. And I really, really appreciate you joining the podcast, Dan. Thanks very much indeed.
Oh, it's great. Thank you so much.
The Today's Conveyancer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todaysconveyancer.co.uk. My thanks to Dan. Thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.